So Windows 11 25H2 is now officially available on the Microsoft Software Downloads page. As you can see here on the Windows 11 Downloads page, the current release is Windows 11 version 25H2. So that means we can now download the 25H2 ISO file directly from Microsoft. And that's exactly what I'm going to be doing in this video. And I'm also going to be installing it in a virtual machine because I want to see if I can still sign in with a local account during the setup process. And also just because I want to see what the first version of Windows 11 25H2 looks like on a fresh installation, just out of the box on the ISO, and to see which of the new features Microsoft actually made available in the stable version. But before we get started, I just want to say that I'm not telling you that you should go and upgrade to version 25H2 right now. This video is more for testing purposes, and that's why I'm going to be installing it on a virtual machine just to check it out and see what the new update looks like. So to get started, I'm just going to scroll down on the Windows 11 downloads page and then select the ISO file and download that. Just select the product language, which I usually choose as English United States, and then we'll get the download link. And I'll just click on the 64-bit download, and that'll then start the download. So I'm just going to go ahead and create a new virtual machine in VMware Workstation Pro here, and I'll just call this Windows 11 25H2, and then I am going to customize the hardware, give it about 8 gigs of RAM, increase the CPUs, and then I'll just need to select the Windows 11 25H2 ISO file that I just downloaded from Microsoft. And that should be it. So I'm going to close this, finish up with the creation of the virtual machine, and then we can power on this virtual machine and start the installation. All right, so the setup process should be the same as before. I'm just going to leave the default languages selected, same with the keyboard layout. And then I'll install Windows 11 and just agree that the drive will be formatted and the files and apps will be deleted. But since this is a virtual machine, this doesn't matter anyway. And then you also still have the previous version of Windows setup here. So if I click on this, you still get the old Windows setup screen. And then I'm actually going to be installing Windows 11 Home in this video because I want to test the local account creation on this build. So I'll select Windows 11 Home, accept the license terms, install Windows only, and then select my virtual machine drive, click on next, and then we'll install Windows 11 25H2. All right, so Windows is installed. Now, before I go through any of these setup screens, I'm going to try and create a local account. Now, I've made detailed videos on this before, and I'll link them in the description down below. But basically, you want to press Shift and F10, or Shift the function key and F10 if you're on a laptop. And I've seen some comments from you guys saying that when this doesn't work, it means Windows is in S mode, which is basically a security mode, so you don't have access to the command prompt in the same way. But keep an eye out on the channel because I'm going to try and see if I can get a solution for that issue as well. But first things first, let me type WinVer so we can just check that this is Windows 11 25H2 and it is Windows 11 Home. So the command that we want to use to create a local account is start ms-cxh : local only, and then press enter, and then we can create a local account for this PC. So I'm just going to call it memory. I'll leave the password fields blank and then just click on next. And that also means we don't have to go through any of the other setup screens like choosing the language, choosing keyboard layout, and all of that. You basically skip all of that and load directly into a local account. So it's good to see that it still works on the official stable version of 25H2. As always, you will need to choose your privacy settings. So I'll just uncheck all of these. And then we can load into Windows 11 25H2. Okay, so I just quickly installed the virtual machine drivers so we can get a proper resolution. So the first thing I want to check is the start menu. If I open the start menu, this still looks like the old start menu from Windows 11 24H2. And it doesn't look like it has any of the new features that Microsoft was working on for 25H2. If we go to the taskbar settings, in taskbar behaviors, we do have the option to show smaller taskbar buttons. So you can have that set to always. So it does make the icons on the taskbar smaller, but it doesn't make the taskbar itself smaller. And that's something I complained about in one of my previous videos as well, when I was checking out the preview version of Windows 11 25H2. And the other thing I checked in that video was to see if recall is enabled by default. So let's go ahead and check that again by running this command. And it also says that recall is disabled with payload removed. So recall is not enabled by default, at least not on this virtual machine. So the base install of Windows 11 25H2 from the ISO does not look that different compared to 24H2, but maybe some of the new features have to be enabled by a update, because like I said before, Windows 11 25H2 and 24H2 is basically the same thing. 25H2 just has some more features added to it that's usually enabled by updates. So I'm going to go ahead and install all of the available updates for version 25H2, and then we'll see if we get any of the new features. Okay, so even after installing all of the latest updates, the start menu still hasn't changed. And I did some research online, and according to the posts I saw, the start menu changes were not implemented in 25H2 yet. The new start menu is still an experimental feature, so that's why we're still seeing the old start menu on this fresh install of Windows 11 25H2. But the experimental features like the start menu can still be enabled using the Vive tool. And since this is a virtual machine I'm using for testing purposes, I am going to go ahead and enable the experimental features. I don't really recommend that you do this on your main computer, as the features can be buggy. So if you also want to play around with the new start menu, then rather do it in a virtual machine like I'm doing in this video. Or if you have a spare computer that you're not using for everyday critical tasks, then you can play around with it on that computer. But to get started, you'll need to download the Vive tool from The Book is Closed on GitHub, and a simple Google search will take you to the correct page. But I'll also include this in my written guide that you can find on my website. So I'm just going to go and download the Vive tool zip file for Intel and AMD, because that's what I have. After that, you can just open the folder and then extract the files. I'm going to extract this to the C drive. So I'll just choose the C drive and I'll just call the folder Vive tool and then extract the files. So now that I've got these files extracted in a directory here, I'm going to do a search for CMD, so I can open command prompt, and I'm going to run that as administrator. Just accept the user account control prompt. And now that we've got the command prompt window open, we need to navigate to this directory. So I'm just going to click inside of the address bar up here, right click, and then copy that file path. And then inside the command prompt window, I'm going to type CD to change directory, and then follow that by a space and a quote, then press Ctrl V to paste the directory where our files are at, and then follow that by another quote, and then press enter. So now we're inside the Vive tool folder, and now we can run the commands that we need to enable the experimental features. And I've got that in a notepad document here. So I'm just going to select that, press Ctrl C to copy, and then Ctrl V to paste it inside the command prompt window here. And then I'll just press enter to run that command. And as you can see, the Vive tool has now successfully set the feature configurations. Now from here, we want to go ahead and do a complete restart of the computer, or in this case, the virtual machine. And when we get back, we should now have the new start menu enabled on this build of Windows 11 25H2. And if I click on the start button now, you can see that we do have the experimental start menu enabled via Vive tool. Remember, this is still experimental, but at least now you know how to enable it if you want to play around with it yourself. I've made a video about this before, which I will link in the description down below. But what I like about the start menu so far is that you can remove the recommended section, you can change the view mode to list, and then you can actually unpin all of the pinned items from the start menu. And as you can see, there is actually a bug. As I'm unpinning these, they seem to be displaying over one another. So this start menu is definitely still experimental, probably not something that you want to have running on your daily driver, but if you want to play around with it in a virtual machine like I'm doing, at least now you know how to do that. And now I've got a nice clean start menu with no pinned items and all of the items neatly arranged in a list. You can also change this to a grid view if you prefer that, or to the category like it was before, which is basically the default. But I prefer the list, and this is most probably how I would set it up if I was using the Windows 11 default start menu. But I use a program called Start Allback, and I'll link a video I created about that before if you're interested in that, and you can check it out in the description below. But honestly, at the time of this recording, whether you're running Windows 11 24H2 or 25H2, the underlying code is the same. It's basically just the features that haven't been enabled yet, but they actually do exist on the 24H2 system. They're just in a disabled state. So I don't really see any need to upgrade to 25H2. The reason I'm making these videos and the reason I'm testing it is because I need to make sure it works with WinHance, my Windows enhancement utility, and I'm also working on a new update for unattended Winstall, and I need to make sure that it works with version 25H2. But with that being said, thanks so much for watching. As always, I just want to thank all of my YouTube members. Thanks so much for your support. I really appreciate it, and I'll talk to all of you guys soon.